Hi, everyone. Welcome to MAR Talks in our Revolutionary Mothering series. I'm Carrie Cavers, founder of Moms Against Racism Canada. And here it is March 2021, and where I am as an uninvited guest on the unceded ancestral lands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, now known as Victoria, BC. The sun is shining, it's peeking through the clouds, and after this I will most likely take a walk down to the beach with my family and throw rocks and drink in the beauty of the nature I'm so privileged to live in. And I feel so humbled to be here talking to our guests today about building a better future while occupying the stolen lands of the Indigenous peoples who have stewarded these lands time immemorial. And through our work in Moms Against Racism, we're doing but just a small part to educate moms and those in mothering roles in anti-racism, cultural competence, and decolonization, with the intention of fostering more people who will work towards making Indigenous sovereignty a reality here in Canada. And as such, today we're talking about the power of revolutionary mothering. And I'd like to share a quote from the book with the same title, which is the inspiration for the series. So the quote goes, "We are looking at mothering as an investment in the future that requires a person to change the status quo of their own lives, of their community, and of the society as a whole, again and again and again, in the practice of affirming growing, unpredictable people who deserve a world that is better than what we can even imagine." And many people do the labor of mothering who would never even dream of identifying as mothers, even though they do the daily intergenerational care work of making a hostile world an affirming space for another person who is growing mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And that was written by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And our guest today is investing in the future by investing in youth. As a trained planner and resilience professional, Anthonia Ogundele has a passion for cities and engaging communities. She was a member of the Northeast False Creek Stewardship Committee, igniting the reimagining of Hogan's Alley, launching the Hogan's Alley Land Trust, which evolved into the Hogan's Alley Society. In 2016, she turned a storefront facing closet into the Cheeky Proletariat, located on Carrall Street, which is an accessible and inclusive space for the free expression of all people. Inspired by her now 13-year-old daughter, Anthonia founded the Ethos Lab, a nonprofit social enterprise providing youth ages 13 to 18 access to engaging technologies and an impassioned community of innovators. Youth members receive access to the tools and skills to be able to create the future they want through their collaborative online platform and physical space. And Ethos Lab is leveraging culture as a vehicle to access STEM, exploration to ensure youth, or to access STEM exploration to ensure youth are creators versus consumers. So Anthonia holds a master's of urban planning and has been an emergency manager and business continuity professional for 15 years. She still remains connected to the resilience community through her consulting work with the World Bank, where she is currently supporting the government of St. Lucia on post-disaster financial management systems. In her spare time, she loves to play Catan with her family and go for bike rides, walks, and shoot hoops. Where she is right now, actually, shooting hoops. Hi, Anthonia. Thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much. It's always wild to hear the bio, but I really appreciate this opportunity. And I'm here on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, known as Vancouver, British Columbia. So I really welcome this conversation on these lands as we think about coming together and anti-racist work and decolonized practice in engaging young people.
Thank you. Thank you. So for this series, we're asking each of our revolutionary mothers the same 3 questions. So if you're ready, I will hit you up with question number 1.
Ready.
Okay, so what does revolutionary mothering mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is such an interesting question because in moving outside of, I think, the status quo of what is expected of a mother, of these kind of stereotypes or boxes that are put around us, that revolutionary mothering is actually saying, I'm going to do something a little bit different. And when I say a little bit different, it really is leaning into yourself, leaning into your strengths, and being your own unique person. And that means loving radically, radically yourself, loving radically your kids, whatever that might look like. And I think as a mom, radical grace for myself, for my partner, my husband, and obviously for my daughter. And revolutionary mothering doesn't just extend to just the individual and the immediate family, but I think it's also looking at the community around you and how are you mothering others and connecting with others, because we are so interconnected. And I realized that quite early, and in even looking at my own life and how my mother engaged, that, you know, growing up in our community, I'd have an auntie across the street who was also mothering me as much as my mom was. And so I think in many ways, kind of bringing back that idea of community and raising our children together is super important. So radical or revolutionary community, I think, is also a big part of revolutionary mothering.
Totally. And it just, you saying that reminded me of the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? And we say that so like I mean, we've heard that proverb. I say it all the time too, right? But what is that? What does that actually mean? Right. And there's so many instances, again, as a Black woman and having a Black child, where you know, we say it takes a village to raise a child, but sometimes people feel that I'm outside of a particular village, or that even my daughter's outside of or othered in the village within that she is within. So I think when we talk about, again, revolutionary mothering and thinking about this idea of it takes a village, it's truly like walking that out and seeing how that manifests in your own life, and how who's in your village and who's not in your village, and are you calling them in?
And do you need to create a new village?
Exactly. And do you need to, yeah, do you need to create a whole new village altogether?
Which you've done, which I hope you'll tell us a bit more with this second question. So, in what ways do you practice revolutionary mothering?
Yeah, you know, I should also preface the fact that I'm a new mother, a new mother to a teenage girl who joined our family about 2 years ago or so, and so for me, how to practice how do I practice revolutionary mothering was starting to see and understand the systems that were either including or excluding or may and were impacting how my daughter engaged in the world. And I think I'll just kind of start off with just a very basic anecdote on where the idea of Ethos Lab, which is, I believe, the community that Kerry would like me to touch on, and deeply a part of who we are, who I am in right now. And that essentially, again, it's a space for youth between the ages of 13 to 18 to be able to come, create, experiment, have access to different tools, but more than anything, a supportive community that allows for the full expression of their authentic selves, which is something that was very important for my daughter. And as I thought about myself, also growing up as a Black youth, that there are so many times where when you are in community, you're expected to behave a certain way or act a certain way, or there are certain limitations to what your imagination might be. Ethos Lab, a place where they're able to come together, create, and ultimately be themselves. And so it's designed centering the humanity of the Black experience. And I use that language very intentionally because the Black experience, without using that language of humanity, is very different amongst all Black people. You know, I grew up in Toronto, I'm in Vancouver, the Black experience is very different. But the humanity of it all really cuts across, not just in the Black community, but all across all communities, where you want a place where you are respected, where you're reflected, and where you're protected, and where you're also connected. And so creating a space that Black youth feel all of those different emotions actually creates a more inclusive environment for everyone. So it was so important for me when I think about, again, how I'm practicing revolutionary mothering, is actually creating that space, an anti-racist space that my daughter's not getting in the school system, even in social settings, as we think about operating in community centers and such, that same level of intention is not there. And the young people are asking for it, looking for it. What does it mean to practically be anti-racist? And a small anecdote that really speaks to the need of a space like this for teens is that my daughter came home and said someone offered her, a student in her class offered her $5 so they could say the N-word around her. And that really does speak to, and to, again, purchase the N-word pass. And that really speaks to the need for deepened relationship between teens to understand the need for, again, that kind of radical love I was talking about before. And so revolutionary mothering means understanding that those teens also need to understand what allyship looks like and what it means to practically walk out an anti-racist practice. And not in a way where we're sitting down and reading books together, but where you look at another young person, both either as mothers or either as kids, and you're like, I see you and you see me. And I'm realizing as I became as a mother, that actually wasn't the case across the board as I am interacting in different spaces, and as my daughter was interacting in different spaces. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna make a place where we all come together. And so that's Ethos Lab in a nutshell. And now I'm actually outside and people are playing basketball around me. So it's really a family of black families, non-Black families that have come together to say, we see each other, and we want a different world for ourselves. And so we contextualize everything within that practice.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I think obviously you are feeling a need, and that it is well received based on your spring break camp that you're running right now and how well that it's going. And I think it's important, like you say, not everybody has that mindset of meeting youth where they're at and like treating them as people almost, like individuals with dreams and hopes and careers and their own creativeness.
Absolutely. I was just talking, because we're working on urban planning and building cities next week as a part of our spring break. And one of the design premises or the context, I'm like, okay, all the adults have gone, they've shot up in a rocket, they're out of here. What do we do? What's happening? And the young person who is going to be leading it with us said, a lot of adults think if they're not in the room, that it's going to become Lord of the Flies. And she's like, I don't agree with that. I think that we have a lot of strong opinions and imaginations, and we could build something pretty cool. And I absolutely agree with that. And so a lot of it is, again, everyone, like meeting the young people where they're at. But for me as a parent, it's really also meeting the parents where they're at. You mentioned that it's well received. But before the passing of George Floyd, this was a really hard sell. Yeah, it was a hard sell. I'd have some parents say, because we are, again, as I mentioned, centering the humanity of the Black experience, people were like, oh, so it's just for Black people. Well, it's like, no, it's just that we're actually creating a different design premise. We don't actually interrogate the cultures in which all of our other youth programming happens, right? When you are in a robotics class somewhere, we're not talking or interrogating, well, what's the context in which these young people are learning? That has created an exclusion of girls and an exclusion of Black people in being in these different spaces. So let's actually think about, imagine the student is a young Black girl with multiple needs. How might you design a space? And it actually, again, just creates a more inclusive environment. So before George Floyd, people would say to me, oh, I hear a lot of Black people are going to be there. Like, will my child be comfortable? And you asked, and I would look back at them and be like, can you imagine how my child feels in your space, in the spaces where they're the only one? And so it was, and it still kind of remains a really bit of a hard sell when we talk about we're doing an anti-racist STEM organization, because that's just kind of how the where we need to go. If I'm creating a place and thinking about, you know, revolutionary mothering my own child and other children, I have no choice but to create an anti-racist place, because my daughter is Black, and I want a place that supports her in her growth. And so what we've actually seen is, again, it's open to everyone, girls, boys, anyone who, again, identifies as those genders, to Black, to Indigenous. It's open to everybody. But we find there's a huge uptake of girls, which is great. And there is a lot of Black youth, and they're coming with their friends that are not Black, because you have a greater propensity of doing something with your friends, and your friends might not be Black. And so I know with my own daughter, so that's where that kind of design premise came from, and how we're practicing it. Students, kids need to know how to be together, and parents need to know how to be in relationship, not just read books about anti-racism or go from marches or talk to me about it. How many mothers are asking me to go and hang out for dinner and not even talk about this stuff, just want to get to know me? That's really important to me. And so a lot of the families that are part of the Ethos Lab crew, we talk about everything under the sun, from arts practice to politics to how do you get your kids to brush their teeth at night? Like, it's just across the board. And I think that that's really important for me, is just be in relationship. And that, more than anything, is anti-racist practice.
Totally, 100%. That is some very wise words, relationship. Mm-hmm. So in that, kind of dovetailing into the next question with anti-racist practices, what advice do you have for those people who are wanting to be allies and dismantlers of racism?
Yeah, the advice I would have is coming back to that statement I just said around relationship, right? If you're finding yourself only at tables with people that don't look like you, or are non-Black or racialized, only at like meetings, then you're not really entering into much anti-racist practice. If you're just giving money, you got to do more. It's really about relationship, right? It's really about reaching out in the schools and connecting with mothers, connecting with fathers, connecting with guardians of many different backgrounds. And so to be an ally, for me, it's not. I even sometimes have a hard time with that word. I just want someone to be my friend, like just be in relationship with me. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, it translates down to our kids, right? So you can be really trying, and again, giving to a lot of different businesses, but if you see a Black-centered or Afrocentric program or whatever that you might want your kid to be a part of, or that or you look at the programming your kids are in and there aren't a diverse set of kids there, then that's a problem, right? That's a fundamental problem. That if my daughter's in the room and she makes up the diversity, that's a fundamental problem. And so in schools, it's kind of contained, and we know that it's going to be a diverse environment. But where we actually have the control, not control, but like where the space of parents come in, is what your kids do outside of school. And that's where Ethos Lab is. I saw that good programs didn't necessarily have the same diversity in particular, in engagement of Black youth. And that there is this language around that parents want, we don't talk about it, but we know about it. And a lot of those different spaces are not anti-racist practicing, nor are they intentionally trying to enter into those places. And so Ethos Lab, when you talk about these diverse anti-racist environments, it doesn't mean that it's like low quality or like it's very like airy-fairy. these kids are operating and creating 3D worlds and building metaverses and talking to Harvard educated mentors. And this is a space after school where they're able to just be. And I think that's what we're trying to do here is really evaluate those spaces that your kids are engaging in. Ask your kids questions. They may be having great conversations around anti-racism work and see it theoretically and get it from a high point, but it's really about their relationship with other kids. And so some kids are saying the N-word with reckless abandon because it's in the music, or saying different things, exoticizing Black youth. I think it's just really, really important that it's actually a literacy for young kids to understand how to be in relationship. And so the language of allyship goes right over their heads at some points. It's really just like, how can you be a friendly, nice person and acknowledge the whole person as well, understanding the context that we live in. I'm sorry. I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. I think
okay.
At the heart of it, what I'm hearing is that you need to get to know people and have those relationships to be able to make those connections and to truly understand and to build those friendships, to be able to even get to a place of being considered an ally.
Absolutely. Just yeah. I think about talking about allyship with my daughter, and she's 13 and she doesn't understand the concept, right? Still, it's still quite theoretical. It's really about who are the kids that will talk to me and who are the kids that won't talk to me? Who are the kids that assume certain things about me? Who are the kids that say, oh, you're Black, don't you do this? These are all of the, and that is a teen trying to understand their identity within all of these contexts. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, I think as parents, we really need to be intentional about the spaces that we put our kids in and interrogate it when they don't reflect the society that we're all around. In the need to have the best thing for our kids, we know what those spaces look like, and we need to start decolonizing those ones.
100%. Decolonize the other ones. And that's one of the advocacy areas that Mara is involved in. We have our 4 advocacy teams, and the latest one that we're getting up and running is in kids sport and recreation. So
100%.
all of their activities outside of school, because there is just a huge gaping hole of addressing any of the racism or the decolonization that needs to happen in those spaces. So
Kerry, I'm just going to quickly just jump in there. I mean, just in terms of an observation or things that have been said, is that, as I talk about centering the humanity of the Black experience and like being a Black-led organization, people are like, oh, it's so great what you're doing with at-risk youth, or it's so great what you're doing with economic spectrum. And there are these just immediate jumping points that people go to because it's a Black-led organization. Our intention is to transform community and shift culture, and that's what I wanted. And that's what I want to do through this work, is that you can have a Black-led organization that doesn't just change or impact Black youth, but actually looking at a different way of coming together after school, and building, again, giving youth the opportunity to build a more inclusive future for themselves.
Fantastic. And Mar will be here to support you in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kerry.
Thank you. Thank you. So everyone who's watching, to learn more about Ethos Lab or to get your teen involved, head to their website at www.ethoslab.space or follow them on Instagram at ethos.lab. So thank you, Anthonia. Thank you for seeing what your daughter needed, for jumping in to build it, and not only supporting her, but supporting so many other youth in the process. Thank you very, very much for all the revolutionary mothering that you do. The world needs your radical acts of love.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kerry. And thank you to everyone that's watching this. I just want to say it's open to everyone. We have students participating from Toronto. We've had people from Lumbee, BC. We've had people from San Diego participate. It's online, so I look forward to meeting you all. And again, Kerry, I feel so blessed to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.